The Speaking Statements, the podcast of statements about the 50 U.S. states. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for alerts for when a new episode is released.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to our bonus middle episode, season 5, episode 6 for the speaking statements. We're doing Washington, D.C. today. I want to introduce Azuka Dike. We call him AC for short. He knows so much about Washington, D.C. because he wasn't actually born there, but he lived very close to there and spent most of his life there. Hi, AC.
Hi, Julian. How are you?
Good. My first question is, what do you like about DC and why?
So what I think I like the most about DC are all of the national monuments. When you go to DC, you see a lot of historical monuments that will immediately catch your eye are recognizable. So, for example, the Washington Monument, it looks like a big tall pencil, but once you drive into DC, you can see it. There's a bunch of different monuments, and there's many museums that you can go and visit. And everything in DC is laid out in a grid format, much like Chicago. So you can easily pinpoint where you are just based on an address. So the other things I like about DC are the green spaces. There's a lot of national parks, community and neighborhood parks, and a lot of places to go where people can do things for fun.
That's a good answer. My second question is, what kind of foods are popular in DC if there are?
So there are some popular foods in DC. DC is very diverse, very multicultural. There's people from almost every nation who are in DC because it's the nation's capital. We have a lot of ambassadors and other people who live and work in DC. But some of the major staples are big slices of pizza you can get at Adams Morgan. There's Ben's Chili Bowl, very well-known restaurant in DC where you can get some great chili. One thing that DC also has is mambo sauce. So that's like a very sweet barbecue sauce. Chicago has something similar called mild sauce, but it's not as good as mambo sauce.
Yeah, I do know matzo sauce. I've never tried though. I'm not a fan of hot sauce. My third question is, why isn't DC a state or a city?
So the District of Columbia is a district, and it's not a state for several reasons. One, it's the seat of government for our nation. It's the capital. So there's been a lot of fighting, actually, or argument or reasonable disagreement whether or not DC should in fact become a state. Although they do have one congressman, they don't have any senators. So DC is still not a state, but maybe one day it will become one.
Yeah, that's a good answer. My fourth question is, are there any popular activities in DC?
There are. There's something for everyone. So one thing that people like to do are go to museums. There's so many museums in DC. One of my favorites is the Smithsonian Museum. There's the Natural History Museum, the African American History Museum. There's museums for everyone. There's even a spy museum. So if you're a fan of James Bond, you can always visit there. Other things that people like to do for fun in DC are go to sporting events. There's the Capitals, the Wizards, the Nationals. There are a number of teams, the Commanders. So there's a lot of people who enjoy sports there. And then just general activities, going outside to any parks, going for a walk, and just enjoying your neighborhood.
What's James Bond?
James Bond is a fictional character. He was originally a character in a book, but they've made a series of movies about him. He's a spy and he works for MI6, which is the Special Secret Service Department out of the United Kingdom. He gets in a lot of different adventures and travels the globe, saving the world. And he's also very debonair.
I do like spies and detectives. My fifth question is, what does DC have in common with Maryland and Virginia?
So the key thing that sticks out is DC is sandwiched right in between Maryland and Virginia. So those are the two states that border the District of Columbia. The other things that they have in common are just the people that live there. DC is very small. It's only a few square miles in area. So most of the people who work in DC actually live in Virginia or Maryland. And there's also a number of waterways that separate DC and Maryland. So typically to get into the city, you'll have to drive over some bridge.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. My sixth and last question is, if someone new came to Washington, D.C., what would you recommend yourself?
So I would recommend visiting the various monuments or museums, but at night. There's a number of tours in Washington, D.C. that allow you to visit the monuments at nighttime. And they look very beautiful when they're all lit up. The other thing I would recommend is take a tour of the White House. The White House allows visitors to come and view the White House every day. And it's a marvel. It's actually wonderful. And it's nice to actually visit the people's house.
Yeah, I'm hoping to go to DC by the things that you said. I love pizza myself. I lo-
Well, save me a slice when you go.
all right. Well, I'm done with my questions. We are glad to have you here to talk about DC.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Julian, and your podcast is amazing.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
And now we'll do our notes for Washington, D.C. Our nickname is our nation's capital. It is not a state or a city. It is a federal district. It was formed in 1790. It is the capital of the United States, and the abbreviation, as lots of you know, is D.C. It is named after George Washington. D.C. stands for District of Columbia, after Christopher Columbus. Washington, D.C. flag is two horizontal red lines with three stars on the top. It borders Maryland and Virginia. The wildlife of D.C. includes Virginia opossums, groundhogs, brown bats, and flying squirrels. Do you know that the U.S. national bird is? Why, of course, it's the bald eagle. Other birds include great blue herons and kernels. Amphibians include bullfrogs, tree frogs, and toads. You might see box turtles, garter snakes, and even venomous copperhead snakes. Watch out. The White House is in Washington, D.C., and it has 132 rooms. You can also visit the Lincoln Memorial, the National Mall, and even the National Zoo. And now we'll do the fast facts with Leo. Give it a go, Leo. We've only got 4. What is the DCC? It's the scarlet oak. What is the DC flower? It's the American beauty rose. What is the DC bud? It's the wood thrush. What is the DC fruit? The DC fruit is the cherry. That's what we've got, Leo. I promise we'll have more next time. Well, bye, Leo. Bye, Julian. We have no quarter for Washington, D.C., but please check in next time for Season 6 intro. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Speaking Statements.